Rob was my oldest friend. It's that simple. He's the person that I've known the longest.
Silence in Hollywood is almost never an accident. Most of the time, it's a tool, traded to protect legacies, bury scandals, and keep carefully built images looking clean. But the silence around Albert Brooks felt different. It didn't feel planned or strategic at all. It felt heavy, the kind of weight that comes from grief, regret, and truths sitting in your chest way too long before they finally break through. This wasn't just industry talk. Albert Brooks and Rob Reiner weren't surface-level friends or passing collaborators. Their bond went back more than 60 years, long before fame, long before All in the Family, long before directing careers and cultural influence even entered the picture. They were just kids chasing laughs, writing jokes, and dreaming about futures that hadn't yet shown how painful they could become. That history matters because when Albert finally spoke, he wasn't commenting from the sidelines. He was speaking as someone who had seen everything up close from the very beginning. And when he shared what he witnessed inside the Reiner home, there was nothing polished about it. No PR language, no careful phrasing, just raw frustration, real sorrow, and a tone that sounded worn down and tired. Albert made one thing clear. Rob and Michelle loved their son deeply. He never questioned that, not for a second, but he pushed back hard on the idea that love alone could fix what was unfolding. His point wasn't cruel, it was grounded. Sometimes love without action isn't enough. He described watching the situation slowly fall apart while everyone stayed quiet, out of respect, out of fear, out of not knowing what to do next. Over time, he said, love started to blur into enabling, not because anyone wanted harm, but because no one wanted to face reality head-on. Albert recalled a dinner months before everything collapsed. When Nick walked into the room, the energy shifted instantly. Conversations stalled, everyone felt it. But Rob responded with hope, real hope, the kind that aches, hope that this time would be different. Albert said that moment stuck with him because hope can be beautiful, but when it ignores the warning signs, it can also turn dangerous. Albert never said Nick was beyond help. He never said Rob failed as a father. What he said was quieter and harder to hear. Ignoring a storm doesn't stop it from coming. And once you hear his version of events, this stops feeling like a sudden tragedy and starts looking like something that had been building far longer than anyone wanted to admit. Rob stood up the second Nick walked in, arms wide, voice warm, acting like this was just another family dinner, just another reset button waiting to be pressed. He treated it like a normal night, like things could still be smoothed over. But Nick didn't come to eat, reconnect, or fix anything. According to Albert, he walked in with a demand, and it wasn't small at all. It was serious money, the same kind of money that had been used before to quiet crises instead of confronting them head-on. Albert says the room froze instantly. Forks stopped mid-air, conversations died without warning. And then there was Michelle. When Albert looked at her, he didn't see irritation or exhaustion. He saw fear. Not sudden fear, familiar fear, the kind that had clearly been living in that house for years, unspoken and carefully avoided. That was the moment Albert says he couldn't stay silent anymore. He pulled Rob aside, away from the table, out onto the patio where no one else could hear. No euphemisms, no soft language. He asked his oldest friend a question that still haunts him. How long are you going to let him hold you hostage? Rob didn't get angry. He didn't defend Nick. He didn't raise his voice. Albert says Rob just looked drained, like a man who hadn't slept in years, carrying a weight that never got lighter. Then Rob said something Albert says he'll never forget. "If I stop, I lose him." In Rob's mind, pulling back meant losing his son forever. He believed his money, his attention, his constant availability were the last threads keeping everything from collapsing. What Albert believes Rob couldn't see was shielding Nick from consequences wasn't preventing disaster, it was pulling it closer. This is where Albert becomes deeply uncomfortable to listen to. He refuses to let mental health become a full explanation. Not something to dismiss, not something to mock, but not a free pass either. Albert says he grew up around addiction. He's seen people struggle, spiral, recover, relapse, and he's blunt about it. Most of them didn't cross this line. He believes something else was driving it. Resentment. Anger, a bitterness aimed straight at the people Nick felt had defined him before he ever had the chance to define himself. Albert talks about growing up under the weight of the Reiner name, the movies, the legacy, a shadow so big it leaves no room to fail quietly. From Albert's perspective, this wasn't just about money, it was about tearing down a pedestal that had haunted Nick his entire life. And now, Albert says he's scared of what comes next, a legal strategy already taking shape, reframing Nick as only a victim, shifting blame onto parents who can no longer speak for themselves. That's why Albert is speaking now, not for attention, but because silence would let the story be rewritten by people who weren't there, and he refuses to let Rob's voice disappear with him. Albert isn't just a witness to the love inside that house, he's also a witness to the damage Rob quietly carried for years. That's the part making people uncomfortable now, because according to Albert, this wasn't just chaos or confusion, there were moments that crossed into real emotional harm, and Rob absorbed it without pushing back. One story Albert shared silenced the room when he told it. It centered on Michelle Reiner. Michelle was the balance, the creative soul, the photographer, the artist, the one always trying to steady the ground beneath everyone else. Albert struggled just to say her name weeks before everything collapsed. Then Michelle called him unexpectedly. She didn't explain much. She didn't even say Nick's name. She asked about security systems, about safe rooms. Think about that. This wasn't someone living in a dangerous area. This was Brentwood, gated, guarded, locked down. Michelle wasn't afraid of strangers. She was afraid of someone who already had access, someone who knew the codes, someone who could walk in without knocking. Albert told her to change everything immediately. Change the codes, bring in professional protection, create distance between fear and reality. What eats at him now is not knowing whether she ever did. That question never leaves him. He replays the call over and over, wondering if he should have gone there himself, wondering if doing more could have changed the outcome. The guilt shows every time he speaks. You have to understand how deep this friendship ran. Rob Brooks and Albert Reiner weren't just close, they were almost the same person split in two. Same instincts, same humor, same timing, careers built side by side. Losing Rob didn't just take a friend, it took half of Albert's world. That grief hardened into something sharper: purpose. Albert is tearing down the glossy Hollywood shield that usually protects powerful families. He says silence is what let everything spiral. When Nick allegedly threw a chair through a window years earlier, no authorities were called, no official report, no hard stop. And Albert says he knows exactly why. Because you don't call the police on Rob Reiner's son. You call a private doctor, a handler, someone who knows how to make problems disappear. That's Albert's accusation, stated flat and without drama. Privilege didn't protect this family, it trapped them. There was always a cushion, always a cleanup, always another chance. Until, suddenly, there wasn't. Albert didn't even hear the news from family. He found out through a business contact who caught emergency radio traffic. He got in his car and drove straight to Brentwood. When he arrived, he saw the lights, the tape, the barriers. He tried to push forward, telling officers he was family. It didn't matter. To them, he was just another man behind the line. That image never left him, and now, with the trial set for January, Albert has made his stance clear. He plans to be there, front row, behind the prosecution. He doesn't deal in theories, he deals in memory, and he's done staying quiet. He understands the family wants privacy, but in his mind, silence has already cost too much this time. He refuses to let it win. The siblings have asked for forgiveness, and Albert respects that choice. It belongs to them. They're grieving the only way children can when they lose parents and a brother all at once. At the same time, they're trying to protect Rob and Michelle's memory without fully erasing Nick from their lives. That's an almost impossible line to walk, and Albert says they're doing it with grace. But he's been clear, he's not walking that same path. He isn't family by blood. He doesn't carry the same obligation to forgive at all costs. Rob was Rob's friend, and the friend isn't looking for comfort, he's looking for accountability. Albert says grief doesn't have to mean silence, and forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. While the siblings are choosing peace, Albert is choosing truth. That choice has put him at odds with powerful people. He's openly furious about how the industry reacted. The flood of posts, the long captions, the carefully worded messages about heartbreak and legacy. Albert says many of those same people hadn't spoken to Rob in years. Some stopped returning calls. Others quietly stepped back when things got uncomfortable. And then there were the ones who knew Nick was unstable. They whispered concerns privately, warned others behind closed doors, but still invited him to parties, still let him linger, all because of his last name. Albert doesn't name names. He doesn't have to. Everyone knows who he means. He calls it performative grief, public emotion with no private responsibility, a show after the fact. He says he isn't interested in sympathy posts. He wants answers. Who supplied Nick that night? Who drove him to the house? Who kept smoothing things over again and again? Albert wants every silent helper exposed, every enabler, every layer of protection peeled back. That's why this story matters. This isn't celebrity gossip. It's what happens when money, fame, fear, and unchecked behavior collide. It forces the hardest question of all: where does love end and responsibility begin? Rob Reiner built a career on stories where love conquers everything, films that taught generations to believe love survives all obstacles. Albert is standing in the wreckage saying something people don't want to hear. Love didn't stop this. Love made it possible. Love kept doors open that should have been closed. That truth hurts because it clashes with everything those films stood for. Albert shared a moment from memorial planning that broke everyone in the room. He was sitting with Jake and Roy sorting through photos, Rob on set, Michelle laughing, family moments frozen in time. Then they found an old photo from 15 years earlier, the whole family together, Nick smiling, calm, normal. Albert's first instinct was anger. He wanted it gone. To him, it felt like a lie preserved on paper, but the siblings stopped him. To them, that photo still mattered. That version of their brother was real. That difference says everything. The family needs to remember the good. The friend can't separate the past from what it became. Neither side is wrong, they're just carrying different weights, and the toll on Albert is real. He's in his late 70s. This kind of grief doesn't fade quietly. Sleepless nights, replayed memories, anger that won't settle. Rob wasn't just a friend, he was part of Albert's foundation. Albert says he's tried revisiting their old work. He can't. The screen goes dark, the laughter disappears, and the silence, he says, is louder than anything he's ever heard. That's why Albert keeps talking, not for attention, not for revenge, but because silence already took too much, and he refuses to let it take anything else. Albert believes something else was taken too, something people aren't ready to admit. He says Nick didn't just take Rob from the world, he damaged his legacy. Try watching When Harry Met Sally now. The joy is still there, but it's heavier. The laughter carries weight. It never used to. That stain isn't fair, but it's real. The most disturbing thing Albert shared had nothing to do with money or fame. It was about Nick's eyes. The last few times Albert saw him, something was missing. Not anger, not sadness, just emptiness. He described it like a building after everyone's moved out. Lights on, structure intact, but nothing inside. What makes this unbearable, Albert insists, is that Rob saw it too. They were looking at the same situation and reading it in completely different ways. Albert saw danger, a moment to step back, a moment to create distance and protect yourself. Rob saw pain, pain that needed comfort, patience, love. That difference in interpretation is exactly where everything broke. One man moved towards the fire carrying hope, the other warned to stay back, and the man holding on to hope got burned. As the January trial gets closer, Albert has made one thing crystal clear. He's done staying quiet. He knows how this system works. He knows how narratives get softened, how mental health becomes a blanket explanation, how juries are gently guided towards sympathy instead of accountability. That's why he's speaking now, and his message isn't polished. It's blunt. Rob and Michelle were not villains. They weren't careless. They were parents who loved deeply, and that love made them vulnerable. That truth is uncomfortable, but Albert believes silence already failed them. Truth, he says, is the last form of respect. There's one detail Albert refuses to let fade away. Rob was afraid that night. Not calm, not drifting, afraid. And that matters. It matters for the record, it matters for accountability, it matters for reality. This isn't revenge, it's grief sharpened into purpose. So, when updates flood timelines and narratives soften, Albert wants people to pause, look past the legal language. Picture a man surrounded by 60 decades of memories, jokes, and conversations that will never happen again, and understand why he won't stop talking. Because the real question isn't how this ends, it's whether anyone is finally listening. If you're still here, drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if this may be Fink, and subscribe to Silent Stardom for more stories that don't get told out loud.